Hey, I'm Richard Fitzpatrick. I'm a shark biologist and underwater cinematographer. So for tonight I'll be talking about my work over the years with sharks and turtles and some of the amazing places I get to explore and document. So I'm based up at James Cook University in the Cairns campus. So I work on sharks predominantly. But I'm also part of the venom unit where we work on box jellies, irukandji, cone shells and other things. At the university we have one of the largest biological filming studios in the world. So this is doing some larval filming for the Attenborough series of clownfish going into the anemone. So we've got big reef sets, mangrove sets, but we also use this infrastructure for a lot of research. We're about to knock the whole thing down and build a bespoke $15 million facility up there, which will also be spending a lot of time and effort in reef restoration technologies. And again, it's funded through Bevan Slattery and his philanthropic arms. Inside the studio, we have lots of different tanks, lots of setups. The kind of work we get, we do a lot of stuff for the BBC, Blue Planet, Nat Geo, Discovery. We kind of get the jobs that no one else wants. You know, the stuff that's really hard that no one's done before, and there's often a reason why. And behavioural sequences. So, you know, the next one, which is the setup of this, the seahorse giving birth. Okay, it's cool. It's all over in about 15 seconds, which is pretty good. You know, but what you don't know is that I sat there for 72 hours straight, waiting for that. Red Bull, Pepsi Max, just waiting and waiting and waiting. You get about 5 minutes notice and it's over like that. And so I did that for the Great Barrier Reef series. And then Sir David in the phone conference goes, where's the wide shot? So after about 3 months of therapy, I did it again. We got the wide shot. It was the last sequence to get cut out of the series. Anyhow, it's being used for other stuff, so it's fine. So, just click again. The stuff we've been doing recently, last year we had our 3D IMAX on the Great Barrier Reef come out. So this is the 3D rig. So I spent a year swimming this washing machine around under the water. So it hasn't come to Australia yet. We're hoping when the Sydney IMAX is rebuilt that we'll see it back. Or see it in Australia for the first time. It's doing really well in the States at the moment and overseas. It's still a lot smaller than the IMAX camera you guys carried around, wasn't it, Val? You guys had one mounted in a sub back in the day. The other things we're doing at the moment, obviously coral spawning. Just a quick update on where we are at the moment. The reef is on the verge of another big bleaching event. Literally every day we're watching. There's been a few minor bleaching that has occurred in the last week. Luckily we've had a lot of cloud cover and the wind has been coming in, changing from northwest to southwest, which has been helping a little bit. We're hoping this front moves up. We're literally hoping for bad weather. Queensland Tourism are praying for a cyclone. So to talk about climate change issues, when tourism makes the front page of the paper going, we're praying for a cyclone, you know that something is definitely happening. If it does bleach further this year, it won't be as bad as previous years. We're right at the end of the peak of the heat, which means if it does bleach, we shouldn't see a mass mortality issue. The reef can recover after a bleaching event if it doesn't bleach for too long. So in the bleaching we had a couple of years ago, where we had 2 years back to back, the far northern sections of the Great Barrier Reef, a lot of reefs were just obliterated. You go back to those sites now and you can see recovery, you know, corals about the size of your hand. But one of the interesting things was even for the reefs that didn't bleach out and die, that year we had no coral spawning. So even if the reef bleaches this year and recovers, it will impact the reproductive output. So next slide. We're doing a lot of work in this space at the moment in, couldn't put everything in the talk tonight, but the last 2 years we've been investing a lot of time and effort in helping the reef in terms of spawning. So when coral spawns, the eggs and sperm go out in the water column, it becomes a larvae, drifts out there for a couple of weeks and comes back. The idea now is let's short circuit that system. Let's collect the spawn, raise it so we get to a high level of fertilization and turning into the larvae. Reduce predation by having these massive nets out in the ocean now with the larvae. And then on the day that the larvae is due to settle, then we physically take it out and put it on the reef. And there's been a lot of technology being developed with Queensland University of Technology, actually using robots to go and disperse the larvae over damaged reefs. The Barrier Reef, there's still amazing places, but there's some bad places and it needs help. So the days of hands-off management are gone. What we're talking about now is assisting evolution in whatever shape, way or form we can. And this will be the future of the reef for the next couple hundred years until hopefully we can get the climate under control, come back, and if we've kept pockets of the reef, then it can then spread as it does normally and recover to get back. So it's a long journey, and it's a journey none of us are going to see the end of. But it's starting, and we have to start these processes now. So we're heavily involved with this. We're using lots of technology. With the company I'm with, BioPixel, we sit between science and filmmaking, and we cross over a lot. And so we're using drone technologies a lot for different dispersal, but even mapping and knowing what's happening with the animals. And probably the best example of where this work is happening is up at Rain Island, which I'll talk about soon. But I'll probably dive into some of the other older expeditions we've led and where we're at with those. So Todd talked about a tagging trip we did for Australian Geographic. Ron and Val were on that trip and did an amazing article that was in the magazine where we did lots of tagging of sharks during that period. And at Osprey. So Osprey is outside the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. And in those days, it was totally open for fishing. So what we're trying to do is work out what sharks were there, what they were doing, what the home ranges were, basic biology. And how we did this was through capturing and tagging. Next slide, please. So because a lot of people are going out there for tourism, we didn't want to be hooking the sharks all the time. So we came up with these crazy ideas like an underwater rodeo where we'd tail rope the sharks. So we put a box of food down. When the sharks came in to grab the food, I could swim up behind, grab them by the tail, put a lasso on the tail and take them up to the boat. Simple. Just avoid the pointy end. But it worked really well. So we'll just play this video and show you what it looks like in action. It's from one of the films we did years ago. We swam really quickly.
The shark bait of choice, fish heads. White-tip sharks normally sleep in the daytime, but this is a wake-up call. Richard gets his lasso ready.
We're on decent size limits. Like that.
And while the sharks focus on the bait, he ropes his first white-tip.
Okay, so you know tiger by the tail syndrome, that's excellent.
The roping technique, despite all the excitement, is actually easier on the sharks than other ways of catching them.
So the other person talking underwater there was the late, great Mike DeGree, who was besides Ron Taylor, one of my great mentors. And I was lucky, in my career to have worked with both. So then we'd bring the shark up, we'd tag the sharks and get them out there. So why was all this important? One thing we had to do was work out where the sharks went. And so we had data loggers. And the size of these circles and the colours depends on the species, but the bigger the circle, the more the time the shark spent in those areas. So the orange are the grey reef, blue silvertip, green are the white tips, yellow are the manta rays. So we had all this data for what the sharks are doing, where they're going. So then a couple of years ago when the federal government decided to declare the Coral Sea a marine park, they put out all these proposals. And their initial proposals were to protect all the waters on the eastern side of the reefs, where the sharks actually spent less than 2% of their time. After years and years of lobbying, we were able to get the management agencies to change how they were going to zone the reefs. And I'll just go back one again, thanks. And essentially, osprey was fully protected, the sharks there, and we had a lot of zoning on the other oceanic reefs in the Coral Sea, where they predominantly looked at the western sides as being the most important areas to protect. So it was one of those few times where your research can actually go through the whole cycle of management and end up having a marine park declared. So the Great Barrier Reef and the Coral Sea adjacent together is one of the biggest marine parks in the world. Not the biggest, the Americans win that award unfortunately with the Northwest Hawaiian chain, but the interesting thing is over here are the waters of New Caledonia, and they're looking at doing a multi-use marine park system as well, which would then butt up to this. So it's been a long, slow journey that did start with Australian Geographic funding back in the day, and expeditions we did with Ron and Val, and we actually had a positive outcome. The final marine park, yeah, it's not perfect. No marine park's perfect, but at least it's a starting point and is way better than what we used to have. So that was the early days. Also, while we're working out there, we were putting little depth computers on the sharks themselves, looking at, starting to look at the metabolic rate of sharks, how much do they eat, what are the relationships between shark diving and tourism. Is it positive? Is it negative? And we're able to quantify the first time that there was direct metabolic changes in the sharks as a result of the presence of divers. Was it good or bad? Essentially, we did show that the sharks did burn more energy when divers were in the water, but for a place like Osprey Reef, where there's very few people going out there now, the overall effect is negligible. But now we have been invited as a result of this, and we are doing a lot more human diver interaction studies around the world. We are working in Bangor Lagoon with action divers. Again, Ron and Val have been there for many, many years. The interesting thing there, we've just only published it last year, but I don't know if anyone's seen the bull shark feeding in Bangor Lagoon. You've got all these bull sharks and they're feeding a lot of food to these animals each week. And we were wondering, is it good for the animals? How much does this contribute to their diet? Are they not eating natural things now? And by looking at the isotopes of the tuna heads and taking numerous samples of the bull sharks themselves, we actually worked out the sharks are only consuming about 3 to 4% of their diet is from the feeding. Even Mike Newman, the owner, was flabbergasted that the sharks really aren't taking that much from the feeding event. And a lot of the individual sharks there don't even feed at all. They're just coming in with their friends. What's happening? Oh, bubble blowers. And then they leave again. So it does show you can have positive shark-human interactions, but it's just one of those things where we now are having the tools where we can measure what the effects are, which is good for the longevity of such an interaction. The other place I work, and I'm really lucky to work at, is a place called Rain Island. It's right at the tip of Cape York. It's about a 2.5, 3-day boat trip to get up there. The island is 800 metres long, 300 metres wide. It ain't that big, but it's the most significant island in Australia for a lot of reasons, seabirds, and the other one is nesting sea turtles. One more slide, sorry. And so this is a time lapse of an average night where you can get 5,000 or 6,000. So this year the peak was 18,000. It was in December. I'm actually back up there in 2 weeks to do research on the hatchlings. Now, this is an example where the expeditions we were running led to an interesting outcome. The government, since the early 1970s, ran a trip for 1 week at the first week of December, and they would go up and count the nesting turtles coming up. And so they could, that was their tally. So when we were doing a BBC series a couple of years ago, we wanted to go see the hatchlings. And you go, well, you know, it was an average year that year. I think we were getting about 12, 15,000 turtles a night. And you go, okay, if we go back in wet season, when the sun sets, the beach should be blanketed by baby turtles. So we went there, no baby turtles. And we're like, what? Something is seriously wrong here. So we spent a lot of time, all night, we'd be doing surveys trying to work out where are the baby turtles. This is while we're filming all day long, and then we'd do research at night. What we found is this. On the king high tides, the salt water was pushing through the island and it was drowning all the nests. So this is and if you go back to the old technique where you're only catching adult turtles, basically what would have happened in years' time, a couple of years' time, basically the population, you know, would have just crashed, and then you're like, what happened? Well, it was something that would have happened 50, 60 years ago was the issue, which is this was what it was. So once we found this, we had the images to take to the government and go, we have a major problem here. This is the largest green sea turtle nesting site in the world. We need to do something. The Great Barrier Reef Foundation had been set up then, and then BHP turned around and gave $7.5 million. And for the last 5 years, we've been rebuilding the island. Now this is an island that is so sensitive, even Attenborough wasn't allowed there for Blue Planet 2. No one was allowed there. It was hands off. I know Ron and Val sneaked up there a few times trying to raise this issue with the government about saving turtles and flipping turtles over, and I've been going there 20 years. If you saw a turtle upside down, you were not allowed to touch it. You had to let nature take its course. Again, we're at the point of assisted evolution. Those days are gone. We took excavating equipment to the most sensitive island in Australia and rebuilt the island. So we took 7 metres of beach here, poured it over the beach itself to raise the whole thing by 60 centimetres to get the eggs out of the drowning zone. And so this was done as a trial in one zone the first year. The second year it was monitored. Then we did the next zone and then monitored. And the whole idea was that not only are we assisting evolution, it's now called adaptive management. We do not have the time or luxury to do the research to go, is this going to have an effect or not? We're at the point where give it a go, and if you see something negative, change it, bring it back, whatever. This is where we are. And so now the island, over half the island, which is what needed to be done, has been re-terraformed. And so when I go back up in 2 weeks' time, this is the 5th year, so you know, we're up there counting baby turtles. Counting baby turtles sounds fun, doesn't it? No, it's not. You dig a 100-metre trench and you spend all night as the baby turtles run down, you collect them, you count them, then you pour them out of the bucket on the left-hand side of the trench. That's not the hard part. Females are still nesting and they're coming up, destroying your trench. So you just spend all night from sunset to sunrise, digging trenches, trying to persuade big female turtles to go 50 metres up that beach to someone else's trench. So it's a lot of work. But it's amazing to think, this one island, the turtles come from all over the South Pacific to there. The seabirds come from as far away as Siberia. If you can affect change in one little spot like that at that level, you're going to have an effect over a massive biogeographic area. We have to help every turtle. Every turtle is saved now because you think what's happening to their habitat, seagrass loss in the countries where they're coming from. Every turtle we save up there helps. And then in the morning, you go around the island. If there's any stuck turtles, you drag them back into the water. There was a cliff here, which Ron and Val talked about the issues back in the day. The whole thing's been fenced so the turtles can't get into the cliffs of death, as we call them. So we use, one of the research programs I'm in charge of is drones, and the drone technology, amazing for filming. But for us, in terms of research, because we're changing the island and we're trying to profile it, and then the turtles literally move hundreds of tons of sand every night, we have to map what's happening. And so when we first started 5 years ago, we'd have 2 surveyors with us, and in 2 weeks' work, 12 hours a day, 2 people, they could map the island to about 5 metre accuracy. With a drone, I can map that island to 1 centimetre accuracy now in 40 minutes. I can do it every day. We can look at net loss and gain of sand from certain spots. The same data set we can use now for turtle counts, bird counts, vegetation counts. So the technology that's come from the filming industry is now being applied into the science. And then, we can build these amazing cloud point source 3D maps. And yeah, it's just really cool what you can do. Plus get really rocking images at the same time. What else can we do? Historically, we've been doing the turtle count at night. It's sort of about 8 o'clock, 8:30, where 4 people walk around the island and you've got to count the turtles. And, and I've been there a few nights where we've had 26,000 turtles. That is a lot of work. How accurate is it? We don't really know, because, the turtles will come up and back, and if it's a big high density night, they'll come up and they go, too hard, go back in the water, come back the next night, go back in the water. If they do it 3 nights in a row, they'll just abort the eggs underwater. If it's a really high density nesting season, it's actually not good for the turtles. They'll dig up each other's nests. To be honest, if you get 5,000 or 6,000 a night, that's pretty well optimum, and which is what we're getting into now as the season's dropping off. And we're going, well, if there was all these females hanging around the island, how many are there? What's a simple, cost-effective technique for doing a really accurate census? So we came up with the idea on one night, when the turtles are on the beach, we go along with a paintbrush and roller and just do a white stripe down the back. We do 1,000. And then we fly the drone around and you count painted versus unpainted. Get the ratio, bang, there's your population estimate, just like that. Really quick and easy. So yeah, rain, amazing place. Very stinky, very hot. Neil Nightingale, when he was the head of the Natural History Unit, we took him there for a month, and he goes, this is pretty well the most brutal environment in the world that he ever filmed at. I have a love-hate relationship with this island. It's always a lot of effort. You never sleep. You're lucky to get half an hour a day. And one of the expeditions we led with the brand new Reef Ranger patrol boat on its first ever trip, we didn't know how much fuel it chewed. And so we're up at Rain Island on the first day, and because I wanted to film, I was on the island by myself during the day while everyone's sleeping, getting ready to work at night. And then the winds came from the wrong direction, and the skipper said, we've got to drop the pick, we'll go to the other reef, we'll come back and see you tonight. Yeah, cool. 6 days later they came back for me. So you just stuck on this. It was like 45 degrees. There was 16,000 females on the island with me. And so I still had to do all the turtle counts and all the other stuff by myself. But yeah, it's a brutal, brutal place. Thanks. So the reason I first started going up there is because of these guys, the tiger sharks. Having that many turtles going to one spot, you see lots of tigers. And it's the highest density of tiger sharks we see anywhere in the world. The most I've been in the water with at one time was 22, feeding on a carcass. And they're lovely, lovely animals. Love working with them. You can get really close to them. They're generally very gentle. You can get right up to them feeding. You just got to be ready. Every now and then you'll have one will turn around and go, skanky, dead, manky, smelly turtle, or you. And then, but if you've got a camera, you just bump them on the nose, and then they'll go back to the turtle. And they're very polite. They're very polite sharks. So they're wonderful to work with. So part of the stuff we're doing up there is, again, scaling up what we're doing with the tail roping, with the underwater stuff. And so we invented this, which is called the claw. It's like a handcuff that goes over the tail of the shark.
They get lucky. Yesterday's rotting turtle is still here.
Let's turn it down a bit. So basically, when a shark's feeding on a turtle, we can get up close to it. I used to do this underwater. Then one of the TV companies did a story on how I was doing it, and my university freaked out. And they said, don't tail rope tigers underwater. So then we invented this, and it's a very safe, benign way of catching it. There it's clicking on the tail. Yeah, let's go back. Unless it might have been me cutting it too short. I think that was a me issue.
They get lucky.
Yeah, sorry, I edited that one too short. Then it goes on. We do all the tagging. and then basically swim the animal for a few minutes. So the one thing with the tigers is that once you've restrained them, you've got to let them know they can swim again. And so you just push it through the water for a minute or two and let it go, and off it goes. So yeah, all pretty cute and benign, which does remind me what I've got coming up. I need to link to my phone. That's there to remind me to recommend that never use inflatable boats for tiger shark research. I have actually sunk 4 now. Our new one is now solid aluminium. I'll skip that. Okay, just what we've been up to with the tigers and the shark tagging this year. Lady Elliot rang me, this is a southern resort on the GBR, in January. They had a tiger that was coming very close to snorkelers, and they didn't want to have it hurt or in any way kind of thing, but they just want, how can we be a proactive shark management? And I said, nothing will piss a tiger shark off more than a shark researcher showing up. And so we went down, caught her, and then I put a satellite tag on her, and now she's off swimming around. And so she was actually coming in within a few metres of kids snorkeling. So it was a bit of a call that something should be done. Not that she was being aggressive, but they're just getting worried about people's perceptions on it. They did a great education program telling them how wonderful tigers were and how lucky they would be to see them. But it's interesting. So we are actually following her at this point in time, and I'll be able to show you how to follow. You may have heard that we had 4 attacks in the Whitsundays 18 months ago, 1 fatal. So we're leading the research on what is happening. So we've been running expeditions down there a couple of times a year, tagging the sharks. For the entire Whitsundays area, the tourism people, all they want to know is what sharks live here and what do they do. The Whitsundays out of the whole Barrier Reef is probably the most understudied area. There is no data at all. So we are starting from scratch. So what we did is we deployed the same kind of listening array around the Whitsundays. And so we've tagged 100 sharks now in the last 18 months. Tigers, bulls, hammerheads, a lot of smaller whaler species. Their fine-scale movement patterns we don't know. We go down the first week of April to pick up all the data loggers. We have satellite tagged the larger animals, and we've had some interesting tracks. One of the bull sharks we tagged went to New Guinea and back in 3 months. One of the other bull sharks we tagged there appeared on the array in Foster. So, and the tiger sharks are going quite large distances as well. So it's one of those ones where people are going, we don't know if they're seasonal, but we are showing that these animals are going large distances. So the whole thing about go and kill the animals the week later, where the satellite tagging shows it can be 50k away the next day, basically didn't work. And the Queensland government and the Marine Park Authority said no more to the shark culling after the week. The community didn't want it happening. And so what we're running there now is basic biology to work out what, where and how. The cause is human related. Sid Harbour, I don't know if any of you have been to Sid Harbour on sailboats. You can have 100 boats a day in that harbour. The visibility there is about 0.5 metre to 1 metre on a good day. And people are just throwing the food scraps in the water. So lo and behold, you have all these animals hanging around, and nearly all the attacks were a result of people instantly jumping in the water and were bitten straight away. So the animals are associating the boats, presence of boats for food, and then the splash for the food going in. And with the limited visibility, even though sharks have really good eyesight, it's kind of a rule of thumb, how far you can see underwater, a shark can probably see twice as far. And they were just responding to this stimuli. So it's pretty logical why the attacks occurred. So swimming's not allowed in that harbour at the moment. One of the issues we have there with the bare boats is conflict of interest. You have some boats that are there for fun and snorkeling, and others that are there fishing. And last year when the attack happened on the 2 English guys, where one lost his foot, a bare boat had been there about 50 metres away fishing. Those guys hopped in the water on a day where there were bait fish everywhere, the birds were hitting the water. The staff now have to do a lot more risk assessment on their ecological conditions before going in. Why is this all a problem in the Whitsundays? It's really related to water visibility, and that comes down to water quality. Again, human issue. The water quality has deteriorated in that area that badly from land management through farming, urban industry, that has now led to ultimately people picking on sharks now for an issue that you trace it all the way back through human issue. Obviously, going forward, changing people's practices. We showed you the picture of the box jelly at the beginning. It's the world's most venomous animal. Okay, it will take you out in less than 60 seconds if you get a good hit. We live with that in North Queensland. Through really good science, we now know when and where they occur. We do not manage the animals, we manage people. We have stinger season, stinger education, stinger nets, stinger suits. We manage people. This is where we need to get to with sharks in Australia, is knowing when and where they occur and manage people. And closer to home for you guys, the attacks that are occurring in the winter months, the whales migrating up the coast now, more and more whales. The satellite tracking that the fisheries department are doing here on great whites and stuff like that is amazing. One of your sharks is currently off New Guinea. But you've got these animals are transiting up and down the coast. Maybe during the winter months, instead of trying to fit a surf in before work or after work when it's dark, and potential predators aren't seeing what you are, start work early, maybe go out for a surf at lunch. Changing how we use the ocean, trying for us to alter the whole ecosystem for our benefit, particularly at a recreational area level, pretty arrogant. So these are the things we need to do. Okay, this is really cool, November last year. We have found a whale shark aggregation on the Great Barrier Reef. We had Brad Norman, the whale shark researcher from Western Australia, come over. These are probably the friendliest whale sharks in the world. You have to push them away, literally from the boat. So we got funding for a spotter plane for a week, and we had ideas from what we'd seen over the years where they were in relation to appearing after coral spawning. And lo and behold, we were able to see quite a few. And we actually got a few satellite tags on. That's Brad putting the satellite tag on. That's our expedition boat. And it was awesome. So it was a pilot study. We're going back up there this year for a really good hit to try and get as many tags out as possible and see where they're going. One tool as a researcher, we always want real-time feed, so we can tell people instantly what are our sharks doing, what are our turtles doing, what are our mantas doing. And so they built this thing called reef tracks. So we'll zoom in, let's have a look. So Alara, she pinged in 6 hours ago. And what they did is they actually animated the tracks so the speed of the movement of the shark is actually temporally correct. So if it lingers or does a high-speed run, you can see where she goes. So Alara is one of our animals that we tagged in the Whitsundays. We can see in the last 174 days, just when she's been hitting the surface, she's done 2,320 kilometres. So she's down towards the cap bunkers at the moment. One of the cool ones is this one. So she hung there until Christmas, or just after Christmas, and then the new year has made a run over there. So this shows that the tiger sharks are not just using the Great Barrier Reef, not just using the Coral Sea, they're using international waters. One of our sharks, Zuza, her tag is currently pinging in Port Moresby. We know she's been killed, and so we're trying to get one of the local dive operators up there to go collect data, find out where they killed her, and to actually get the tag back again. And I just got told today one of our sharks has actually been found dead on one of the drum lines on the Queensland Shark Control. Which is a bit upsetting. It's a lot of effort for us to tag these things. Get quite attached to them. So we've got mantas on there, turtles on there, all that kind of stuff. So, and literally you can dial in every day and see where and when our animals are and what they are up to. The other part of Citizens of the Barrier Reef, we've made Oceanpedia, which is about 200 videos for kids, about 2 minutes long. This is the first prototype, the new one's coming out in a few weeks. We've also had them translated into like 50 different languages. So it's relevant for the whole Indo-Pacific. So we're just trying to get the tools out there for teachers to show kids. Right, if you want to hear, University of New South Wales made me write a book about 2 years ago. So if you want to hear more dumb stories about almost dying, that's available. And of course, just if you want to follow Bipixel and our Bipixelations Foundation as to what we're up to all the time, all that social media stuff, I don't do it, staff do that. I always get in trouble if I try and post something, I always do something wrong, tag it in wrong or do something wrong. But there's stuff happening all the time, particularly updates to our research and what we're up to. There you go, that's kind of what we're doing at the moment.